Hi, y'all. This is Tara Pohlmeyer. I'm the Communications Director at Proudest, Texas. And thank you so much for joining us for today's Happy Hour segment with our candidates and folks who are involved in progressive politics here in Texas. I'm here with Representative Jon Rosenthal from the Houston area in HD 135. Representative, how are you doing this afternoon?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Absolutely. How are things going in your area right now? And what's keeping you grounded, as we navigate COVID and everything else that's going on in the world right now?
Well, staying grounded is so important. So I'm going to credit my wife, who's an awesome, beautiful, badass Latina immigrant who keeps me grounded all the time, not just through pandemic crisis and stuff. So family is super important to me. So I'm really happy that she is with me, supportive and patient when I lose my stuff. She keeps me grounded. Um, and I right now the whole household is trying to slim down a little bit. We were nobody said when they named this disease COVID-19 that that's the number of pounds you put on in the first couple of months if you're sitting at home all the time. So we're all trying to slim down and get healthy right now.
Oh, that sounds great. No, I definitely sympathize with the COVID-19, similar to the freshman 15.
Yeah,
Um,
like the freshman 10, COVID-19.
Absolutely, absolutely. What are you seeing needed in your community right now? How are you connecting folks with resources, and what is top of mind for folks in your district?
Good. It's a good question. I'm really glad that you're asking this because I'm sure it's the same all over in slightly different flavors in different areas. But right now, this pandemic is driving concern in many areas. So either the pandemic and people are concerned about their health and their welfare and their employment. So we've got high unemployment numbers, and then with schools starting up, I'm right in the heart of the Cy-Fair Independent School District, which is the third largest school district in the state, and the largest employer, and of course the economic anchor of our communities out here too. So the way that the pandemic intersects with these communities and those activities is first up for nearly everybody I talk to, and of course I phone bank daily, talk to people daily. Um, I am on a constant mission to connect people with resources to help folks however I can, to use this position to help as many people as I can while I can. And so we do stuff both through online presence and email, and then I work with the school district. I go to the school board meetings and also the Chamber of Commerce. So anyone I can help in any way, I'm down for it.
That's wonderful. I'm curious for folks who are maybe in other areas of the state, how would you describe your district?
So great question. I'm House District 135 is northwest Houston area. We're outside of the Houston corporate limit. So folks out here, we don't vote for mayor or city council, and we have our own services like the Cy-Fair Volunteer Fire Department and the Harris County Sheriff's Department and the constables patrol our area. So it's Northwest Houston. For those who are familiar with going between Houston and Austin, I'm right off of Highway 290. So if you take Highway 290 from Austin down to Houston, just as you're getting into Houston, that's where I'm at, right off the intersection of Highway 6 and 290. And the two roads cross at an angle like this, and the district grows out like a bow tie from that area.
That's a perfect description. Thank you. I'm curious, you were elected before the 2019 legislative session, and the 2021 legislative session is coming up. What are some of your proudest moments from 2019? And what are you hoping and wanting to take on for the next legislative session?
Well, proudest moments. First, just getting sworn in. I mean, really, it's a big deal, but when you're sitting in that chamber in the Texas House of Representatives with all the stuff everywhere and the high ceilings and everything, and they swear you in, it hits you in the chest. And then when you get to work on big things like voting for the state's budget, you know, $250 billion budget, for 2 years, and probably one of my proudest things is being part of a group of newcomers coming in to really change the entire conversation. We flipped 12 seats in the 2018 election. So coming into 2019, the focus was on the will of the people, and that was uh, buffering public education, putting more of the state's money into public education. And it's something we all ran on, and it's immensely gratifying to be part of a session where the state spending on public education went way up. And the only other anecdote I'm going to give is we went back and forth about what bill I wanted to file first, because you only get to do the first one once. And so my first bill is what we're affectionately calling the 911 bill, and this would make it a crime to use a false police report out of bias or prejudice. And so if you're a barbecue Becky calling the cops on someone, and you can demonstrate to a jury that person called out of bias or prejudice instead of any real emergency, they could end up going to jail for a few months.
I think that's a needed bill, and I'm so glad that y'all are carrying that as well. That sounds awesome.
We'll definitely bring it back next time. Oh, and I was named Freshman of the Year by the Legislative Study Group, so that's an incredibly proud moment.
That's awesome. There you go. I would love to now bring in our second guest and kind of talk to y'all together, if that's all right. So we have Cristina Tzintzún Ramirez joining us. And Cristina, thank you for taking the time to talk with us today. How are you?
Yeah. Good to be with you all. This is like, the most social thing I'll probably do for the next few days is get to talk to people, even if it's only on Zoom or whatever.
Absolutely. I want to talk to y'all both. I mean, you have such, a wealth of knowledge when it comes to Texas politics. And I think we are seeing Governor Abbott right now, attack localities, mislead Texans throughout COVID-19, and really ignore some of the common sense things that would save lives at this point. What should Texas be doing right now to actually help Texans? And Cristina, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah, I think what we have to remember right now is that there are millions of people in our state that are in deep economic pain and also in a healthcare crisis. Governor Abbott, I think, really sees himself as a king, not as a governor. He loves local control when it's up to him. And when our county and city governments have tried to act to protect us when he has failed to, he's now trying to say they don't have the right to do that. So, I think some of the things that I would love to see that happen right now is, one, I wish our governor would expand Medicaid, especially during a healthcare crisis where 1 in 6 Texans don't have healthcare. It would be a game changer for close to 1 million people in our state that would have healthcare tomorrow if he would expand Medicaid. And the next thing we have is the fact that right now there's a new report out that shows that 48% of Texans that are renters, renter households, likely will not have enough money to pay their rent next month. That's millions of people in our state that are really suffering in this moment. So I think if we can continue to pass at the local level, making sure we're halting evictions right now, that is incredibly critical that we do that. So I want to see folks continuing to put pressure on local, county, and city governments to continue to expand and extend dates for moratoriums on evictions, especially because we haven't seen another stimulus and folks are really suffering. And the last thing I want to say is at the federal level, not just in our state, is that we know that Folks that are in mixed status households, someone that may be undocumented in the household, were left out of any stimulus. I have a dear friend of mine, Jose Chavez, who's been my friend for 10 years. He has 3 daughters, works in construction, has lived in Texas for the last 25 years. He's undocumented, didn't get any stimulus check. Work sites were closed down for weeks, and they were forced to leave their apartment. And that is happening to millions of people across the state.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that story, Cristina. Representative Rosenthal, how are you seeing Abbott's actions play out in your area?
Well, so first, I would like to express my gratitude to the governor for finally following the lead of our county judge, Lena Hidalgo, in implementing a statewide mask order, something that should have happened earlier, that our county, not just our county judge, but the county judges in the major metropolitan areas seeking advice from their local health agencies and experts tried to implement these type of mask orders and stay-at-home orders early. And of course, you know that the governor of Texas stepped in, usurped their authority to govern in their own counties, which is the whole design of county governance, is for them to be the extension of the state government, but closer to the people in their own counties. And so finally, the governor kind of saw the light, I believe. I hope he will continue to do so. I'm remarkably worried about the way that the governor, along with the Department of Safety Health Services for the state of Texas and the Texas Education Agency, are really not following the science. They're not even following their own guidance, and forcing the position of our school districts. And so while I think school openings and school opening policies and procedures could have guidance from the state, guidance from their county governments, they really should be working campus by campus in close communication with local health experts to develop and grow their protocols as the situation warrants in each area. So hopefully the governor will relinquish control back to the localities where really it is best administered.
That's a great segue here to one of our questions that we got from someone watching, Rose Garcia, on what are your plans for helping teachers and kids, who are attending school. I mean, what we talked a little bit about letting localities kind of, figure out what works best for them and what works best for their kids. But what is the direction forward here on, making sure our state education system, fills the needs of our kids?
How much time do we have? So I think to start with the immediate concern, the state of Texas and our localities need to be pursuing testing, massively improve our scale, massively reduce turnaround time. So the state's position right now is we're going to discover if a student has COVID when they're in the classroom exhibiting symptoms. That's when we're going to find it, according to state policy. And then we're going to try to remediate that. So for me, I would rather see a very high percentage of students and faculty be tested before even walking in. I think that gives you a much better chance to corral and contain growth of this virus and try to get your schools functioning properly. And then I don't know if we're talking about the session, but we're going to have a battle on our hands to keep the extra funding that we got in the last session. I want to increase funding for our state education in strategic ways to help particularly challenged communities.
Absolutely. Cristina, what do you think?
Well, I don't like to listen to what Governor Abbott says is safe for our kids. I like to listen to hardworking teachers. And I've been following the lead of Texas AFT, American Federation of Teachers, that have really been advocating for us to do virtual learning, which is the safest way. But we also have to recognize that there's studies out. For example, I'm sure folks saw that photo of children actually in Silicon Valley, not here in Texas, but in Silicon Valley, where we know that 40% of Latinos, for example, don't have internet in their homes, and children were outside of Taco Bell trying to pick up Wi-Fi. So the reality is that yes, virtual learning is the safest thing, but we also have to make sure that there are resources and investment and making sure that folks can get online to be able to learn. And we also know that working parents, it's a real challenge. I don't pass judgment on anyone, whether they feel like they need to send their kids to school or keep them home. But we do know that it's the safest thing is for folks to do virtual learning, and that we need to make sure we're investing enough for families to be able to do that. I'm lucky my 3-year-old little boy is not in school yet, but it's still a lot of work for every single parent that's having to be home or trying to figure out childcare. This is an incredibly hard time. And I just want to make sure that our governor is acting in the best interest. And the other thing that I want to see him be doing more of is, we have Representative Rosenthal and other representatives that have been asking hard questions and trying to hold his feet to the fire about how we can make sure that our young folks get the best education they can given the circumstances, and also do it in a safe way. And I don't think that there's been enough transparency or clarity, and we need to keep pushing to make sure that happens.
Thank you. Completely agree.
So I'm just going to interject that
Yeah.
Cristina is on point, hitting the nail on the head with everything she just said. I'm just going to second what she just said. And I don't know if you all know this, but on the conference call that we have weekly with Department of State Health Services, they have stopped taking live questions from us. And so, well, I'll admit to having been a problem for the director, because I will get on there and press him with line after line.
That's not being a problem. That's doing your job. Right?
Exactly right. But that's not the reason. They've been sued by one of the state senators, and so they're trying to be legally cautious. But just the same, there's no transparency, and you've got the big three: the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker of the House, implementing policy in this state without involving the lawmakers. We're the ones who are elected to debate and discuss these things and bring the perspectives from districts from all over the state. So they're defeating the design of our state government by doing that.
100%, 100%. Talking about, our government officials, we are just 32 days from early voting beginning and election season getting underway. What races are y'all excited about in watching, this new, blue wave that we're seeing and the opportunity to turn Texas blue? What races do y'all have eyes on?
You want to go first, or you want me to go first? You go first?
I want you to go first.
Okay, I have so many. So I guess on the congressional side, I'm really excited about, I'm in Julie Oliver's district in 25, and so I'm very excited about her race. I'm excited about Mike Siegel's race, another progressive running for Congress, and I'm really excited about Candace Valenzuela in North Texas's race to be the first Afro-Latina in Congress. And at the state level, I'm really excited about Krista Castañeda's race for railroad commissioner. It is a poorly named position because it has nothing to do with the railroad, but everything to do with the oil and gas industry. And if you look at actually the power that this seat has, and that it's a statewide race that Democrats could win, and that Texas is the largest carbon emitter in the country, this is actually one of the most powerful positions for folks that care about climate change to take in the entire country. It could have really far-reaching impacts to emissions of that we see happening here in Texas. So those are three races I'm really excited about. And of course, I am excited in Houston about Akilah Basie's race, which I believe is totally winnable, and Lorenzo Sanchez's race. The last thing I want to say just about the election, because it's around the corner, and I'm sure like everyone watching, we're doing everything we can to flip Texas. And as a Latina, I feel like so many in my community are often afraid of what politicians will do to us. But we are incredibly powerful, and I think it's time that politicians were afraid of what we can do to them with the power of our vote. And so this election, I think, is our time to show that.
I love that. Thank you.
I love it too. And again, on point, on point. So I'll start out by saying there ain't no power like the power of the people, and the power of the people don't stop. And and that's how I got elected, with a large volunteer effort. And we have got great enthusiasm and great momentum in a number of races. I'm also excited about the railroad commissioner race for Krista Castaneda. She's a great candidate, and I've talked to her pretty much at length. You know, I sit on the Energy Resources Commission committee, sorry, the Energy Resources Committee in the Texas House. And so Railroad Commission comes in front of us, and I would love to have some sensible, progressive, pragmatic voice coming from our commissioners there. I'm excited about my race. You know, I won by a fairly slim margin last time, and I have a very serious challenge on my hands, and I am totally down for this. Enjoying it. I love Akila Basie. She's in the district adjacent to mine to the south, and so she and I have already become friends, like for the last year and a half. I feel very good about that race for sure. And then I'm loving Seema Lajaverdian, who's in Congressional District 2, in actually a competitive race against Crenshaw, Dan Crenshaw, who ran as a moderate and then has turned out to be a total Trump acolyte. Somebody that we should remove. And I think that Seema is running a very exciting and very powerful race, and so she should be watched. She's an Iranian immigrant who's an American citizen, a cancer survivor, a mother, a small business owner, and a pure powerhouse. So I cannot wait to see how that turns out.
That's amazing. And a few weeks ago, we talked to Seema. So if anyone's interested, please check out her videos. She is absolutely a powerhouse.
Yeah, Seema's awesome. And I do want to just add that we have a very good chance at Democrats taking over the Texas House. And I don't know if that's a question we're going to ask right now, but
yes, please talk about it.
This, I cannot even say how critical this is. So even before COVID turns out to be a life or death struggle for us, and I thought redistricting was going to be the most important issue in this election, but it still is vitally important that we draw fair districts. And if the Democrats have the majority in the Texas House, we have the Speaker's chair, and we will chair the redistricting committee. We get to draw the maps. And while Republicans control the other levers of power, if the Democrats have the House, we have a real position for fighting for fair maps. And it's going to be a huge focus of the session. And I think we have a very good chance to do it. It's going to be a lot of hard work, but we've got a bunch of competitive House races that I feel very good about. Democrats taking the majority in the House and electing a Democratic Speaker of the Texas House.
Absolutely. Cristina, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sorry, the internet's choppy, so I'm sorry if I can't see. You know, I'm really excited about the potential of the whole state flipping, but the idea that we can take back the Texas House when redistricting is about to happen, we're talking about redistricting that will set the political trajectory of Texas for the next decade. So this is one of the most important fights we could possibly have. It's totally within grasp. So I want to encourage folks, you know, presidents is critical, because watching the disaster and chaos, to the destruction that happens every single day under this president for so many communities, is really, the pain is immeasurable of what's happening. But we can also have an impact here in Texas. And we need to understand that if you change Texas, you change the entire country. And we are at that point when that is about to happen. And it's not just about flipping for the presidential race. It's about taking the Texas House, and the fact that we're going to have potentially 3 new congressional seats. And it all is going to come down to how, just as Representative Rosenthal said, about how the districts get drawn to make sure that they're equitable, that they're in a way that actually won't dilute the power, especially of Black and brown voters, which has consistently happened in this state. and is one of the greatest ways that Republicans try and use to undermine democracy right now is through gerrymandering.
Absolutely.
And Republicans in Texas have gerrymandered this state with surgical precision. That's the Supreme Court's language. So we need folks who are interested in fair districts, not to disadvantage groups.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Leading up to this, monumental election, I know a lot of times we say, like, this is the election of our lifetimes, but it's like, this time we mean it. How do we turn out the vote, and what issues do you see motivating voters in your communities?
So it's a strange time to try and turn out the vote. I'm sure I'm like many people in this event that are doing everything they can, phone banking, contacting people via text, sending postcards, especially in this time that we're in. I made the mistake of not only doing all of those things, but starting to watch Handmaid's Tale. Is about a dystopian future and a totalitarian state, so it hits a little close to home. But I know that right now there's so many things that folks can be doing. The Texas Democratic Party is doing an incredible job of really engaging volunteers virtually. I've been talking to so many folks that have been doing that. There's also organizations like Texas Organizing Project, my former alma mater, JOLT, and Move Texas, that are engaging voters of color and young voters. I want to encourage everyone that we have, just as mentioned, 32 days until early vote starts. We need to make sure that everyone is prepared and ready. With 29 million people, there is no such thing in this state as too many volunteers. We never have enough volunteers. We never have enough resources for this state. So if you haven't made a contribution to one of the organizations I've mentioned, please do. Or to Proudest Texas as well, that's going to, doing important work. And especially giving to these organizations that can have a digital presence right now is so critical. Women, just go talk to your neighbors really right now. Find out what races are happening in your district that are competitive, and make sure you're going out and talking to your neighbors. It's one of the most important things to do, especially because, as mentioned, there's so many competitive races now in Texas. Representative Rosenthal and I couldn't go through all the races that we were excited about because there's so many, which is great. So I promise you there's a competitive race in your area too that you need to get involved in.
Absolutely. Representative Rosenthal, I'm sure you have a call for volunteers as well.
I absolutely do. So it was volunteers that put me into this chair. It was a large volunteer network that, it's just like I said, there ain't no power like the power of the people. So get involved. Do learn who your state races are. Democrats are targeting 22 state house races that were very competitive for Beto in 2018. And some of them he won, and some of them the margin was less than 10 points. But I think we have a very realistic shot. We only need 9 to flip the House. I think if we do it right and everybody pulls together, we could get 12 seats, a clear majority. And what we're doing to activate voters, I'm dropping literature. So instead of knocking on their doors, like I love to do, actually, one of the best parts of the job was doing that. I just put my literature on their door. So I leave my card, I walk through a neighborhood just like I normally would. I put my literature on their door, and then I come home and call them all. So the phone banking programs, the texting programs, the lit drops, even if you're just participating at sharing your favorite candidate stuff online on Facebook and other social media platforms, all of it is helpful. It all feeds in together to get that name recognition and to get the message out. I think people are motivated for change, and you're seeing people in the streets at this point. So we just there ain't no power like the power of the people. And if we don't stop, we will win. We will prevail. And I kind of see it as this whole good versus evil. I'm a big Star Wars and Star Trek fan, and it's just like, you're going up against the evil empire. We can win, y'all. It's not even we don't need Luke Skywalker and the Force. We can do it with the power of the people.
Absolutely. What issues are you seeing really motivate voters? Like when folks talk to their neighbors, or when they, maybe go to volunteer, what are the issues that are really motivating people to get out and vote?
For me, it's the COVID crisis. It's the mismanagement at the federal and state level of this crisis, and the way that it's playing out is driving all these other problems. So that is the number one thing. And then, of course, the first thing that ignites is the healthcare issue, the cost of healthcare. Even for people that have it, cost is through the roof. And this governor has, for whatever reason at this point, continued to refuse the Medicaid expansion. We're coming in, I mean, we could get millions of Texans insured and we could lower rates for everybody across the board. And all he has to do is say, oh, yeah, we'll take that money that Texans already have taken out of their pockets. We've already paid it in federal tax. Let's just bring that money back. So those two, and then, of course, public education. Those are the big three in my area.
Christina, what are you seeing?
I think I like to break up voters into two blocks. There's like the diehard politicos that have been paying attention for the last 4 years, and then the folks that have been living their lives day to day and are feeling the brutal impacts of the political implications of the moment that we find ourselves in and are really getting engaged. So obviously for the folks that have already been engaged, it's just watching what's been happening at the presidential level and seeing so much chaos and destruction. Our democracy has never been perfect. It's always been a work in progress, but to see it undermined in so many ways, to see the institutions of the media, of government, undermined and kind of picked apart in the way that they have been by this president, I think has so many people motivated to volunteer, to vote, to get out, do everything they possibly can to have a different outcome this election than we had in 2016. And then for folks that are getting engaged right now, I think sadly it's the real consequences of COVID-19, both the health implications and the economic implications. And here in Texas, healthcare is always at the top. I'm a person that believes that it should be an American right to have high quality, free healthcare for every single person in this country, just as every other industrialized nation on the planet except the United States has for its people. But you're going to continue to see healthcare driving people to want to go and vote and continue to make sure that they can go to the doctor when they're sick, especially in this moment. And then I think the fact is that millions of people were already living on the edge economically in this country, that previous to COVID, you had close to 60% of Americans that had no more than $1,000 in savings. That's 60% of Americans. And now you have millions of people that have become unemployed and a government that has acted almost completely with callousness about their economic circumstances. And, I think folks are remembering when Steve Mnuchin said that $1,200 would be good enough for folks for 10 weeks. I'd like to see him live off of $1,200 for 10 weeks. And it's been way past 10 weeks and still Americans haven't received anything. And Republicans even supported cutting unemployment by $600 a week when you have close to 30 million people unemployed. And I think on election day, that is what voters are going to be thinking about.
100%. Thank you guys so much for sharing. To kind of wrap us up here, what is something that you are looking forward to, and what is kind of like some closing thoughts for our viewers right now? Cristina, we can start with you if that's all right.
I believe that we're at a turning point. Sometimes when I look at what's happening nationally, it's hard. I just hear from so many people that are in so much pain and facing really tough circumstances. But I do have hope that if you change Texas, and if you change Texas with a big, bold vision about what our country can be, that you can actually start changing the rest of the country. So I have hope for what changing our state can do, and that we as Texans have this incredible opportunity to really chart a new course for our country. And that out of all the chaos and pain and suffering, sometimes that exposes what needs to change. And to me, it's not just about getting rid of Donald Trump. It's about the fact that we need universal health care, about the fact that we need an economy that actually works in the best interests of ordinary people, and that we need to treat communities of color and immigrants with the respect and dignity that all people deserve. And I think the callousness of this government has shown why we need to make the substantial and structural changes that we do. And I think that's all going to come home here to Texas with 38 electoral votes and 36 congressional seats that, when we flip Texas, it will change the political outcome, not just for an election cycle, but for an entire generation in our country. So that gives me great hope.
Absolutely. And Representative Rosenthal, can you bring us home here?
Man, I'm going to bring us home, but first I'm going to say Cristina is awesome. I just love your words. I love your positions.
Likewise.
And I thank you so much. And I'm also optimistic. So as things have gotten worse, I continue to be optimistic that the scale of the tragedy is going to be directly proportional to the scale of the change that we can cause. And there are so many areas where it's being highlighted right now that we need change. We need positive growth. In areas like healthcare and education, in employment law, I mean, all of these areas where progressive policies could really benefit everybody, from the working class all the way up to, corporate presidents. Everybody benefits when we all rise together. And so I'm extremely hopeful that the influence of this time, what we're going through right now, is going to leave an indelible mark on the psyche of the whole country, and on our state in particular, right? And the young people who are coming up through this, it's going to shape their worldview, and I would hope shape their worldview in a way that they bring forth a will of society that points to a more positive, progressive direction that's equitable for everybody, that's good for all of us, that has people treated fairly in society and by the law. I mean, we're going to have great opportunities for criminal justice reform, for healthcare reform, and we just have to go after it. So the last thing I'm going to say is, on this anniversary of 9/11, I know it was a long time ago, and some people may not remember the direct impact of that. But for me, what really this is bringing home is the spirit of unity that we had in this nation immediately after that happened. I hope people can reconnect with that spirit of unity and look at the type of positive changes we can create when we work together to make it happen.
Thank you both so much for spending this time with us today. Representative Rosenthal, I wish you the best of luck for your re-election. Let us know what we can do. And Cristina, I can't wait to see what you do next as well. Thank you both again for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Good to see y'all.
Thanks, everybody.